Howdy, my friends, and welcome into today's episode. Merry Christmas! We finally made it. We are in the week after Christmas, this Christmas season. So, Father Anthony co-hosts with me today, and as is our yearly tradition for our Christmas episode, Catholic comedian Aaron Weber joins us later in the show. He's an absolute blast. I got to see him in person this year. He's just the best. He's just the best. So, Father Anthony and I start off with some stories, kind of recap our Advent as we head into, as we were recording this, we were still towards the end of Advent. So we recap that, talk about some Christmas themes. Then we talk with Aaron. He shares one of the funniest stories I think I have ever heard. And it's not just a story, it's a moral conundrum that is also hilarious. So we hope that you'll enjoy that. And then finally, we close the show with our second time that we were ever doing our new segment called Plain Theology, where I ask Father Anthony deep theological questions with absolutely no prep whatsoever and see what he can come up with. So we hope that you enjoy today's show. If you do, please hit subscribe wherever you are listening or over at youtube.com/Forte Catholic. Hit that little subscribe button. Enjoy today's show. Merry Christmas, y'all. What's up? And welcome to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll. That is Father Anthony Sciarappa. Merry Christmas, Father.
Merry Christmas.
We did it. We are recording a little early. We're recording the week before Christmas, but as you're listening to this, Christmas has already happened. So we're going to do a little bit of, this is officially our Christmas episode, but here in this first segment, we're going to be doing a little bit of Advent recap and then talking about Christmas. Sound like a plan to you, Padre?
I like it. Let's do it.
All right. So I have to tell you a funny story, and I've only told this story to one person, and
Okay.
I've been sitting on it for a while because I had to talk specifically to you about it. One, because not a lot of people would get the punchline immediately. So for those people listening on the show, I need you to be the person to explain this story to them. I'm doing no explaining at all. I'm just going to tell the story.
Okay.
And then you can laugh and then explain why you laughed. Sound like a plan?
Okay. I hope it goes like you said.
I think it will go exactly like I said. And don't worry,
Okay.
if my jokes don't work, we've got Aaron Weber, an actual comedian on the show later on. Yeah. And then I'll throw you under the bus a few times throughout this show. That's my Christmas gift to you. So we have our associate pastor at our parish. It's funny. I told a story a few weeks ago on the show where we had like our associate pastor was being like our pastor for 3 months because our actual pastor was on a sabbatical in the Holy Land, and then our associate pastor kind of got bumped up to like actual pastor, and then this other guy came in to cover the associate pastor things. So it was a very confusing story, and I just want everyone to know that it's not confusing anymore because pastor is back and associate pastor is now associate pastor again.
Good.
So associate pastor is he's my age, about a year younger than me. So kind of in that same, priesthood group as you, right? These young priests who, if I could categorize broadly, there's a lot of you guys are very much into like returning to some big traditions of the church without going full, like complete Latin all the time. All these things, but bringing back, like you've talked before about how you like Ad Orientem and how you like some of these other things, right? So
sure.
Our priest, our associate pastor, is the same kind of way. He wants to bring back a lot of these traditions, like some of the Latin chants and some of the what is this called? Incense. I was like, the people listen. That was for you to help me, and you didn't help me.
That was. I wasn't quite sure. Like we punch people in the face now at mass. Like
bring back the punching, like Saint Nicholas. Merry Christmas.
There we go. Yes.
So he's like, we want to bring back incense. We want to bring back this, but he, like a lot of people that I consider like in y'all's priest kind of class or whatever, like this group that's coming in, is you have a very good balance of let's return to these traditions, but also in a pastoral way. Right. So like there's been, there was kind of a group before that was very pastoral and might have missed the theological and traditional. Then there's a group before them that might have had all the theological and traditional, but might have missed the pastoral, right? And I feel like this young crop of priests is able to. It's a weird word. I knew as I said it was a weird word. We just grow out the field.
This bushel of priests. This hay bale of priests.
It's so funny because I couldn't find the word and it was just spinning for a little bit, like it was loading, and it just came out, and I just saw you laugh at me immediately. I was like, dang it, I couldn't think of a better word. This bushel basket of priests. So like he has this pastoral thing where he had the entire role of pastor for 3 months, and so he could have made any of the changes that he wanted to, right? Obviously being respectful to the actual pastor is going to come back eventually, but he could have just been like, hey, we're doing all Latin mass and all Latin everything for 3 months. Take it or leave it. Dad will be back in 3 months. Deal with it or whatever, right? But, and he and I had talked about it, right? So one of his big things was he's like, I want to start chanting the mass in English. So like the mass parts, like, whenever we get to like the Eucharistic prayer, right? You have the option to either say that or to sing it. Or like we saw in the roast of Father Anthony Sciarappa at his live mass, you could do both simultaneously.
Yeah, yes, you can.
Where you started singing it and messed it up and then just said it. It was one of the greatest moments in the life of Father Anthony Sciarappa.
That's some next level priesting right there. Yeah. That's not everyone can do that.
Very pastoral, the why not both meme right in the middle of mass. So he and I have been talking. He's like, hey, I want to start chanting. So he was like, he would chant like the first, there's like all these sections in the Eucharistic prayer, and I don't want to get all technical and everything, but essentially he would chant like 3 sentences. And then the next month he would chant like everything until the Holy Holy. And then the next a few months later, he would chant all the way through the next part, right? So he was kind of like, training the congregation to like, hey, this is kind of a place that we're going. And it went very well. Like everybody was cool with it. It was fine. But he would talk to me, throughout those few months and be like, hey, we want to make these changes. I don't want to do too much. Will you let me know if I'm ever doing too much? And I was like, dude, I think you can actually do a little bit more. Like I get your hesitancy, right? Because I don't think we should go all the way to this full shift right now. But I think you could be doing a little bit more of what you want. And he's like, cool. Yeah. Okay. So Advent comes around, and I know this is our Christmas episode, but I have saved this story just for you. First week of Advent, because this is something we did through all of Advent, but the first week of Advent, I hear about this change. I knew he was going to make some changes for Advent. I just didn't know what they were. So not the priest. The priest is standing in the back of the church because he's about to process in for week 1 of Advent. The lector goes up and says, welcome to St. Joseph's Catholic Church. Welcome to all of our visitors. Here's a couple of announcements. And one of the announcements was, since we're in a new season, we're in the Advent season, we're going to be making a few changes to our Mass. For instance, we're going to be chanting some of them. We're going to be chanting the Mass parts in Latin, like the Alleluia or the Kyrie.
What? But the Hallelujah is Hebrew, and then the Kyrie is Greek.
It sure is. That's the point. So I immediately whip my head around to the associate pastor, and he was all excited because this new change was coming. Yeah. And you could just see we haven't started Mass yet, and the feet on his face.
Yep. That's what you get for trying.
It made my Advent. I don't care. Like the season of waiting, it was fine. I didn't have to hope for anything at Christmas because I got everything I needed on the first week of Advent. It gets worse. It gets worse.
Okay.
It says we are going to chant the Mass parts in Latin, and then they obviously said the Alleluia or the Kyrie.
Yeah.
So just Mass parts going through this Mass.
Okay.
The Kyrie was first. That is, as you mentioned, is in Greek. There's no Gloria during Advent, at least most days during Advent. So there was no Gloria. Then we did the Alleluia, which, as you mentioned, was Hebrew. And then, finally, 35 minutes into Mass, we get to the Holy Holy. And sure enough, Sanctus.
Okay,
we finally did it. 35 minutes in.
That's some real Latin. Cool.
We did it. And I was so happy. I was like, guys, we finally did it. We made there was a mistake. people don't know. Most people don't know. It was kind of a funny little thing just for me and the few other people that might know in the congregation, and just me looking at the priest's face and being like, "Oh, that's awesome." But then I thought we made it through the mistake.
Sure.
And then we get to right after the Sanctus, priest, he does his thing, and then we get to the memorial acclamation. I'm just going to give you any guess to what language we did that in.
Oh, he definitely did that in English. There's no
100% right back to English.
No one ever does that in Latin.
And then we went to the Amen, which is what language?
Then we're back to the Hebrew. Yeah.
Then we're back to Hebrew. And then we did the Lamb of God. What language?
Everyone knows the Agnus Dei. They can do that in Latin.
We did that in Latin, and then that was it. So we had
changes.
We had a quadlingual mass. We went Greek, Hebrew, Latin, English, back to Hebrew, back to Latin, and I just could not wait to talk to the pastor. To the associate pastor, whenever we were done. It made my Advent. It was so, because I laughed every single time. The announcement wasn't changed. It was the exact same week too. Finally, I made fun of the associate pastor to his face. Can you guess when the announcement stopped?
Yeah,
it's after I made fun of him. So.
Yeah, that's you're doing the Lord's work there. That's a mess. That needs to get fixed.
It was very, very fun for me. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
How was Advent for you? I guess I should let you talk a little bit of this.
Oh my gosh, it was busy. Lots of confessions, which is good. Happy to do all of that. It's basically pretty miserable. I was pretty miserable all Advent. It's dark outside.
Busyness. Okay, yeah.
Dark outside. No time for friends. Got to do all this other stuff. Got a little bit cranky. I'm not gonna lie. But things in the parish have been going well. Starting to get excited for Christmas. And here we go. But you know what? I just don't like this time of year. Not the liturgical season, just in general. It's like, I wonder why I live in Pittsburgh. This place that's always dark and cloudy all the time. It makes me sad.
Right. And you're just very busy during this time, right? So it's funny. We did our seasonal depression episode last week, and this was supposed to be the Christmas episode. But I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate it.
I was like, it was terrible. It was bad Advent, lame.
So, I know that Christmas is busy
purple,
too.
Though.
Oh, nice, very nice.
Yeah.
And pink, obviously.
Absolutely.
Pink, yeah. Do you get it? Like, do you get most people, I think, get a break from around Christmas to the New Year. Do you think slow down for you? I know you have Christmas masses and stuff, but will you get a time to relax and take a break?
My pastor and I will do a thing where, after Christmas, I'll basically be working that entire week. So he gets a few extra days off. And then next week, he'll be working all that week. So that I'll get 3 days off, which will be nice.
Nice.
So we do that. Things are. The thing is, even though things might calm down, it ends up every little thing that you have to do, at least for me, annoys me. Why is somebody calling today? It's December 23rd. No one should be calling the office. Go away.
Right.
Whereas normally that wouldn't bother me at all. It's not that big a deal. Just everything becomes more annoying.
Oh, you mean in November when you got a call during this podcast and it annoyed both of us?
Yes. And somehow it's especially if I'm recording during the day, calls should not go to my room number. So somebody apparently thought that whatever question was an emergency, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but yes, after Christmas, I'll get a little breaky break.
Good. I'm happy for you. I heard something about, we have this Christmas season, this Advent season every year, and most of the themes and most of the homilies and most of the podcasts and everything are very samey. I've heard it before. Yes. Is it good to have a reminder?
Sure.
Allison and I were pretty open. We're having some seasonal depression stuff too. We needed the season of hope, and then hopefully we can have this season of rejoicing, right?
Yeah.
But usually the themes are pretty similar. But I heard something this past week about this Christmas and Easter, or this Christmas and Advent season that rocked me, because it's a character. It is something in me that is a character. It is a positive in my character, but it can vary at the same time. It can be one of my biggest character flaws.
Okay.
and I heard the story of Joseph. So like, we get the whole, the angel comes to Mary and says, you're gonna have a baby. She has to tell Joseph, like we get all that, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that rocked me in a new way was that Joseph, the stepdad of Jesus, right, was convicted to do the right thing and divorce Mary quietly. Like, under the rules and the law and everything, he could have divorced her very publicly and made it a big shameful thing. And we hear every Advent that, he was convicted to change his mind. But even before an angel showed up, he was convinced that he was doing the right and the just thing. And in comparison to what was supposed to happen, he was going to do the right and just thing and divorce her quietly so that to not bring shame upon her, right? And then was shown a better way and was able, when the angel came and said that, hey, Mary's not lying to you, right? Like it was us, he was shown a better way and was able to pivot and was convicted to take her into his home. And man, like it hit me like immediately, because I think my conviction is pretty strong. Like conviction to like hopefully to do the right thing, but especially once I make a decision, that's what I'm doing. Like I will discern beforehand. I'll talk to people. I'll, go to some confidants or whatever. But like once I make a decision, that's what I'm doing. And so I just imagine myself being in Joseph's position, being like I can change my mind from doing the wrong thing to do the good thing, or doing the good thing to choosing to do the wrong thing, choosing to sin or whatever, right? But going from something, Joseph was already taking a big leap publicly in the public sphere and doing the quote unquote correct thing.
Sure.
And to be able to have his mind changed, it just blew me away, because it's like, it's very hard for me to do that. Once I've made a decision, I like to stick with it. And it stuck out to me. Like that was like the big takeaway for my Advent season.
Yeah. And I think it's especially now, I wouldn't say this was necessarily Joseph's state of mind, but something that we can understand is like, especially when you have made a decision and you're pretty proud of the decision you've made.
Right.
Like if Joseph was thinking, hey, I found a really good compromise for this thing. I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing a difficult thing. And then okay, you thought that was a great idea, but doesn't matter anymore. This is the right thing to do. Like to let go of your conviction. It's like sometimes to let go of your pride as well, which can be a very difficult thing to do. Especially when you're utterly convinced that what you're doing is the right thing, which, in this case is super complicated, because he was doing the right thing, if you look at it that way. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So for him, it took an angel appearing to him to change his mind. And he changed his mind. Right. But like, I am now like worried, because I noticed this. I know this about myself, that I'm, once I make a decision, like you said, even if I think it is a good decision, it's hard for me to change. It's like, what is it going to take for me? Right? Because like, I've never had an angel appear to me. Right? But like, I want to make the best choice, not just a good one, even a really good one. Right? And I've just been sitting with that of like, what's it going to take? Is it going to take deeper prayer? Is it going to take allowing people into my life, to like inviting people to say something, like, say the strong word? Like, I don't know what it is, because I don't know what would change my mind, because I tell you what, like in those normal life situations, now, can I change my mind? Yes. But it takes somebody like you or Allison or my wife or like my mom or like somebody I really trust. But like most of the time, if somebody from outside of like my inner circle says something, it's only going to entrench me even more. In
right.
decision,
Yeah.
Right.
That happens.
I'm going to divorce her even quietly.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I don't know what it is for me. Right. So it's like, I think I pretty often make good decisions, but I think there might be like these great decisions that I'm missing out on because I don't have angels talking to me. And I don't know what to do.
I think it's important to remember that not every decision we make is a big deal. Like, 'cause you don't want to be, you can drive yourself crazy trying to think of what is the absolute best thing to do in each situation, when sometimes, and actually a lot of times in life, good enough is actually good enough, and that's fine. But yeah, for those bigger things, like for big life choices, there can be that anxiety there. But I think even in that, to remember that if you've done your best to make the good decision, then you have to trust God enough to either support you in what you're doing or to, in His time, lead you in a different direction. If you make the decision making thing about yourself and whether or not you're right or wrong, you end up kind of almost losing faith in God to direct your life. You end up losing faith in providence because I have to pick the perfect thing. And that can be a way to really just drive yourself crazy spiritually.
Yeah. I think, you mentioned pride earlier, and I think that's always going to be the thing for me, right? Where it's like, once I make the decision and I know that it's right, it's really hard to break that pride of like, oh, maybe I was wrong, or not even wrong, but just like it could be better, right? But like that ability to pivot, like that was, I always think of Friends, it makes it kind of a silly thing whenever I hear pivot, but like his ability to pivot from good to great after he had made the decision, I think that's the thing that I found very admirable of like being able to pivot after the decision, which like is what it's kind of what that last point you were making of like, okay, I'm gonna make the decision, I'm gonna move forward with it, but if something else comes up, I'm gonna be willing to change.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Last little point about Joseph is, as I was thinking about that pretty much throughout most of Lent, one final Joseph point stuck home is like after all those decisions and after all the good things he did, protecting his family after Egypt, going into Egypt, coming back and everything, it's like he still lost Jesus, right? And like he still lost Jesus. Him and Mary lost Jesus for days.
That's a rough one.
In the temple, right? And even then, like he was still chosen and the right person for the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like that, I got goosebumps when I said it because it's like, like that's like, man, like even if our mistakes and we mess up, it doesn't mean that we're bad or we made the wrong decision or that we weren't the right person for this. It's like he still chose Joseph to be that leader and protector, even though he knew that at least in this one instance, he lost the person that he was meant to protect, and was still chosen and still did good things. So that gave me a lot of hope kind of at the, as I was thinking about the whole Joseph and decision-making process.
Yeah, that's a really nice thought, but also we don't hear about Joseph after that, so maybe he got fired after the whole temple thing.
Oh, crap. Well, thanks for ruining Christmas, Father Anthony. But don't worry. We have somebody to salvage it. Aaron Weber, one of our favorite Catholic comedians. It's our Christmas tradition to have him on the show. Whenever we come back, he's going to lighten the mood a little bit. Thanks for ruining my Advent and Christmas, Father Anthony. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. If you're finding yourself with a little extra free time over this holiday break, I'd like to suggest to you to go catch up on some of the videos at youtube.com/Forte Catholic. Not only do we have full episodes of this show where you can watch the show along with listen to it, we've also got our Catholic Foundation series, which is our 10-week study that me and one of my friends taught for our parish. It's like the 10 basic things that every Catholic needs to know. So whether you're new to Catholicism or you'd like a little refresher, you can check out that series. We also have our pop culture series where we talk about our favorite movies, TV shows. We've had about one a week come out over the last month, so you can check those out. We've done the Willow the Willow movie. We've done Andor from Star Wars, so stuff like that, stuff from pop culture. We've got some worship and some talks and all that kind of stuff too. So check it all out, youtube.com/Forte Catholic, and I hope that you enjoy it. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll, and as is our Christmas tradition, not only do I have Father Anthony Sciarappa here, but I have one of my favorite comics, period, my favorite Catholic comic, Mr. Aaron Weber. What's up, buddy?
All right. Happy to be back. Yeah, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. A quick recap for people who, maybe haven't listened since last Christmas. Maybe people listen to the podcast like they go to Mass, Christmas, Easter, maybe Ash Wednesday. So Aaron has been our Christmas guest, I think 5 times, 5 of the last 6 years or something like that. So it's become a fun little tradition for us.
That many times, huh?
Yeah.
I could have sworn this is like I thought this was my second time ever doing it. So it's good that,
well,
I had no idea.
Half of your appearances here have been memorable, and that means a lot to me, actually.
That's better than my usual batting average. So that makes me feel good.
For sure. So, a little recap for people. You've been on the show. It's always our Christmas week episode. It's a fun little tradition for us. So fun recap for how I met Aaron. I went and saw a John Chris show many years ago, and there was this opener for the opener, right? And his name was Aaron Weber. And he talked about being Catholic in a Protestant megachurch full of 5,500 Protestants, me and Aaron. So I sent you a DM after your show, and I was like, "Hey man, I think you did a great job. It was so much fun. We became friends. Got you on the show." But we had never met in person. So I saw you perform comedy that first time. We've talked on the show, anywhere from 2 to 5 years. We're not quite sure. But this year was the first time that we actually met in person. And I'm surprised how it happened, because you came and did a comedy show in Bryan, Texas, which I didn't even know they did comedy shows in Bryan, Texas.
I didn't know Bryan, Texas was a city until I got booked on the show. So yeah, it was just great. Comedy will bring you places that you never otherwise get to go. So that was cool that worked out, man. Was that close to where you live? Do you live in College Station or Bryan exact?
Yeah, so typically I'll say I live in Bryan, College Station, but I live in Bryan. I live 8 minutes from where you did the show. Yeah, so
wow, that's amazing.
We got a babysitter. My wife was able to come. So me, my wife, and my best friend, we all got to meet you. We got to see you at the show. You did a great job. It was very funny. And then we got to meet you after, take some pictures. It was just it was like one of my highlights of the year. It was really, really, really fun.
That's awesome, man. Thank you. Yeah. That was a fun one. We were staying at the hotel above the comedy club. They tell us it's a haunted hotel in Bryan, which is I was coming off a run of I'd stayed at 3 haunted hotels that month, and I was just over it by that point. So I didn't even, I'm not even going to look into this. If I hear noises, I just don't care. I'm just gonna sleep through it. But that was a fun show, man. I'm glad I got to finally meet you afterwards.
So you said you'd been in a few haunted hotels after a while, and you just kind of were over it. Did you have some experiences with the other world, the other side?
No, I
hotels?
never have, but I'm over caring about it and looking into it. I found that every old building in America, they just start going, well, it's haunted. And that somehow makes it more interesting, because otherwise it's just an old building with nothing going on. So I did a show in Iowa at this place called the Renwick Mansion, and they said it's a haunted mansion. And I walked around, I didn't see anything. I was just like, who cares? Maybe we invite this stuff in. The more we try to learn about it, and care about it, and talk to him. I'm just not going to talk to him.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a theory, but I want to hear from the priest's perspective. What do you think about the old hauntings in the hotels, and Aaron's theory about if I just don't talk to them, maybe they'll leave me alone?
I think in general, not talking to ghosts or demons is a good thing. So thumbs up for that idea. Usually against that whole activity. But hotels are places where people do stupid stuff, and sometimes stupid stuff has consequences. Whether they're doing a seance or doing a murder, that can mess some things up, haunt some things for sure. Yeah. So probably.
Well, isn't it scarier to just say there's been a murder at this hotel? Say I think there's a ghost of a librarian walking around.
Yeah, a ghost of a librarian.
I guess it depends on who the ghost is.
Yeah,
it's there's a ghost of a murderer. That's a scary ghost. If it's a ghost of a librarian, who cares?
Right.
Well, I would love for there to be a ghost of a librarian in the hotels that I stay at, because she would just walk around telling all the other guests to shh. Yeah.
There you go. That's a very helpful ghost.
And that was actually my theory with dealing with either loud guests or potential hauntings in old buildings, because I travel and stay in hotels too, and I just have a white noise machine. I turn it on very, very loud, and that way if the demons are like Taylor, I just can't hear them, because the white noise cancels them out. So you got the priest and saying don't do seances or murders. That's our tip for this Christmas episode.
I stand by that.
And here's my practical tip of just bring a white noise machine on your iPad and you'll be fine.
Yeah, either way, out of sight, out of mind. Ignorance is bliss.
Exactly. Ignorance is bliss. on the podcast that you're on every week called Nate Land with Nate Bargatze and some other guys, who cares? It's just you and Nate to me. That's all that really matters. But they always make fun of you for being a Notre Dame grad that doesn't know a lot. So I like when you say stuff like that.
Oh, thanks. You think? I think they just love when they, I used to be the guy correcting them and trying to add info to stuff. And I think eventually I just decided, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth my time. Right. So I'll just play down to them.
I listen enough to know, but it's one of those things that I know that you do, but I'm not sure that you know that you do it.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what your go-to is now? Like, I know exactly the moments that you want to say something and try to correct. Do you know what you do now?
No, I don't.
You just giggle in the background. It's the funniest part of the show to me.
Okay.
You're just silently giggling. Like, they're just having a conversation and you just won't even jump in because you're like, it's so messed up. I can't even fix it if I tried. And you're just giggling in the background. And my wife and I listened to an episode together the other day. And I pointed it out to her. And there we were. This is one of the craziest moments. We looked crazy. We did that Apple AirPod share thing, where we could both be listening in our AirPods to what was happening on my phone. And we took a walk through around our neighborhood and we're listening to you giggle and it's making us giggle. So we're just two people walking down the neighborhood, not saying a word to each other, giggling randomly because of you.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'll definitely, I'll be aware of that now. I used to just say, that's fair.
Yeah.
Way of just going, all right. Yeah, that's totally fair. Let's move on. It's not even worth digging into what's wrong about that.
For sure. So yeah. I have a comparison, and this is gonna get into me eventually throwing Father Anthony under the bus. Well, we'll see.
Okay.
One of us is wrong. It's either me or Father Anthony. I think you're gonna help. You're gonna be the deciding factor because that's what we like at Christmas is family arguments and somebody else deciding. So as I mentioned, I went and saw you in person at this comedy show, and you've been on tour, so I would imagine you've been working on this material for a while, and it was pretty polished. I could tell that it was you had your set. It was pretty polished. It was very funny. I went to one other comedy show this year. I went and saw Gabriel Iglesias a week after he did his special in Dodger Stadium, filled Dodger Stadium, and the next week I saw him in Houston at the Houston Improv. And it was, so he went from Dodger Stadium to a comedy club with 200 people, 200, 300 people, something like that.
Right.
And it was 2.5 hours long, just him, because he was working out new material, right? And he's open about it. He talked about it. It wasn't a publicized show. This was just hey, I just did this big thing. I want to come back and work out this new material, kind of we're in my roots, in these comedy clubs. And so it was 2.5 hours, and a lot of it was storytelling, but there were definitely some jokes, and you could tell he'd been working on it. But I would say the first third of it was pretty polished and very funny, and then the middle, he's just telling stories and talking to the audience and asking questions and kind of going, and then the last 15, 20 minutes was pretty polished. But I mean, 2.5 hours. So it was an interesting experience, seeing you go for, 45 minutes, very polished, and then seeing this other very good comedian go for 2.5 hours, not as polished. So it's I probably got the same amount of laughs in your 45 minutes and his 2.5 hours because
interesting.
It was a different experience, right?
Well, actually, the show you came to see, that was all new stuff I was doing, Taylor.
Oh, that's great.
Really,
I was about to say, it seemed like it was really good.
That was all brand new. I walked out there. I said, what should I talk about? In general, a good rule of thumb is that it's always less of that than they're giving off. Because the illusion of a good stand-up comedian is it looks very casual, very conversational, very off the cuff, but so much of it is prepared ahead of time. And I'm not at the level yet, thankfully, but I'm not at the level that he is at, Gabriel Iglesias, where you can guarantee everybody at his shows has seen his earlier work.
Right.
They've all watched his last special. Now they're clamoring to see what else he's going to say. So that's difficult. And I know a lot of comedians have different processes for that, where they're trying to build a new hour from scratch, right? So they wedge new stuff between older stuff that's more polished, like it sounds like he did. it sounds like he's opening up with stuff left over from the last special, and then putting the new stuff in to work that out, and then closing on something good. That's pretty common. I'm at a level where, I mean, you had seen me before, but I can guarantee most of the people at these shows have not seen me before. Yeah. They haven't listened to my album. They don't know who I am ever, really. So that's kind of a luxury where I can just do older stuff. I don't have as much pressure to just put new material out.
That's how I feel whenever I get moved to a new parish. I can just bring back all the old homilies. I love it. Now I've been here for a year, and I got to start making up some new stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I've got 1 year's worth of homilies, and that's it.
Like when you go to college, you can reuse all your papers from high school. I had a friend from I can't remember if I told you. I had a friend from high school. He went to a community college here, and he had some class where he just had to write a paper. Like that was the assignment. It didn't have to be about anything. It was just, please write a paper. And so he hit me up and was like, do you have any papers? I go, yeah, I got a paper on Aquinas about angels. I mean, so I just sent him that. So this is a kid at community college. He had told to pick any topic, and he submitted a paper, Thomas Aquinas. Kid's not even Catholic. Like, it made 0 sense, but it's the same principle. You jump parishes, let's dust off the old homilies. Exactly. This is all brand new stuff.
Did he get a good grade with your Angels Aquinas paper?
I hope to God he did. I got a good grade at Notre Dame. So if he got a worse grade at Volunteer State Community College, I would be furious.
That's very funny. That's very funny. And this brings me up to throwing up, or not throwing up. I did that this weekend. It's been on my mind. To throwing Father Anthony under the bus. Because, Aaron, you were saying that, like, every comedian, it wants to look like it's easy and kind of, just really easy going when you're up on stage. Well, Father Anthony and I got into this fun little debate the other day where he says that the less you try to be funny, the more funny you are. And I was literally driving to see Gabriel Iglesias as he was talking about this, right? So I'm like, I don't know, man. I think comedians try pretty hard to be funny, right? So, Father Anthony, I'm going to let you kind of. This is your argument in my words, but what is your argument that people are funnier when they try not to be funny?
So what I was actually saying, Taylor, is that when people try to be funny in the sense of, like, they make it their personality, like they are trying to draw attention to themselves, like being a comedian, and like look at me, I am funny, instead of the idea of, like, finding what is funny or working on something, like kind of like an artist. Like, a good piece of art will speak something. A self-indulgent piece of art will point right back to the artist, and like that just doesn't work as well. So I just know people who try to make comedy or try to be funny desperately so, and it just ends up looking kind of pathetic at times. Instead of, like, I'm not saying you don't work at a craft or try to polish something or try something new, but it's precisely when you stop making it about yourself. Because even I think a lot of comedians who make it about themselves, they are making a character and working on a character. It's when you're like saying that I am valuable because I am funny that very oftentimes these people aren't. That's what I was saying.
What do you think, Aaron?
That's interesting. Would you liken it to? I was just talking about this with a buddy of mine of why we stopped watching SportsCenter. Mm-hmm. Because it used to be years ago, I would just have SportsCenter just running on my TV would just be on with SportsCenter on it. And I just stopped caring. And my friend suggested it became when the anchors became the celebrities, and it became all about them, and it becomes less about the sports they're talking about. And now it's like, let's just watch Scott Van Pelt just kind of talk about himself for an hour. That's what it feels like now. Is that a fair analogy to what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's becomes less about the thing that we both audience and comedian enjoy, the comedy, and more about this person, their personality. Like I said, even when people are making the comedy about themselves, it's very often like they have crafted a character and they're playing a character on stage.
Right.
It's something that is like shared and discovered by both. as it's going on, not like, hey, look at me, look how funny I am, because
Mhm.
that's always kind of cringy. And you can tell.
I agree. And Taylor, that's a much more complicated idea than you gave him credit for.
Well, that's why I let him say it in his
Exactly.
words, because I was on the other side of the argument, right? But I think there is some nuance there, and I think there's still some part of it that I disagree with, right? And it comes to people, like, we're talking about comedy in general, but I think working at anything, right? Where it's like I can see where, like, Aaron, if you were just doing comedy and you were making it all about you and all about money and all, and like, if there was no humility, it would be annoying. But you're funny. I can tell that you work at it, but there's some humility about it. But at the same time, the irony of this is when we're done with this conversation, we're going to plug all of your things. AaronWeber.com, at Real Aaron Weber on all the social media, right? Because there is still a part of it of, like, if this is something that you are doing for a living, you still do want people to be pointed to what you're doing. Go listen to the special on audio. Go sign up for his next show or whatever, right? So I get what you're saying, Anthony, of like the kind of the pride and humility element of it, but I think there's still that, like, when people are making a living, the priest wouldn't understand, everything's paid for and you still get paid, but for the rest of us that have to make a living, we have to, like, actually try about this stuff, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's marketing's different than comedy, though. That's like a whole different genre. Like, yeah, how do you that? I don't know if that's actually disagreeing with me or not, but yeah, it makes sense to point to the person when it comes to, like, hey, how do I find this material or this comedian and this talent? Yeah, sure, but that's different than the person making the thing about themselves. It just, and what else are you gonna call it? It's like a practical thing.
I'm very confused.
Like, what would the sign for Aaron's comedy show in Bryan, Texas be? Like, what would you call? Like, you can't just name it. I don't know. No. You have brought up something that has nothing to do with this argument.
Which is a good way to win an argument.
Yeah. I know. What's funny is I think this is what he's doing is a good way to win the argument. I think I brought up the thing that crushes his argument. He's like, that has no place here. I'm just a big fan of working hard for the things that you care about, right? Like,
sure,
Aaron, you're doing this for a living. Like, I might have taken a little offense to it because it's like I'm trying to do a comedy entertainment thing within Catholicism. So I do work hard on being entertaining and being funny and sharing the faith in a fun way. And, like, yeah, it would be great if it looked easy all the time. And I think sometimes I make it look easy. Sometimes I can force it, right? So, like, I can hear what you're saying and be like, okay, like, maybe I do try to force it a little bit much, but it's like I still, want to work hard on it to make a good product. To use my gifts, but at the same time, I do want people to come and listen to the show and hit subscribe, right? So there's, like, I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, sure.
Look at that compromise. Look at that. True meaning of Christmas.
Yes, the meaning of Christmas is compromise.
That's what Christmas is all about. It's two sides of an argument, both deciding that they're bored with the argument. So they agreed to move on.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of agreeing to moving on and me winning the argument, Aaron, how can people find you and see all about you and learn about this great comedian?
I got a moral dilemma I want to run by it too.
Go for it. Yeah.
There's the comedy club in Nashville. There's a group of homeless people that are always outside the club. Okay. And I've developed sort of a friendship with a couple of them because I see them all the time. Right. So guy, this is a few weeks ago, he says, can I have some money? And I only had a $10 bill on me. So I said, here's what I'll do. I'll give you this $10. You run to the gas station, get me a Milky Way bar, bring it back to me, and you can keep the change. Because I'm Christian, I want to help people, but I'm Catholic, so I want them to earn it. So I said, go get me a Milky Way bar. So, like, I'm like, worst case scenario, he runs off with my $10, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned something. So I said, all right, so take this money. He runs to the gas station. He comes back with 2 Milky Way bars. And I go, well, dude, I only wanted one. You could have had more change. And he goes, don't worry, I stole them both. And then and then he walked off with the full $10. So now I'm just sitting there, stolen goods. This is actually the worst case scenario. I've funded a crime. You know? So I guess my question is, what is my moral responsibility in this moment? Because I'll tell you what I did. I ate both of them. I don't know if that's what I was required to do morally in that moment.
Well, you're not you and you're hungry, Aaron.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
I mean, you can't let the
Snickers
food go
bar,
to
but
waste.
applies to Milky Ways too. You're right. Can't let the food go to waste for sure. There you go.
Right. And
Yeah,
you can't
that's
like
one of the
bring it back
cardinal
to the
virtues.
store because they can't put that back on the shelves because who knows if
It's
you
been
like
passed around. Yeah.
Mhm.
Totally. All right. These are all good points.
Imagine that conversation. You walk in, the head of the store is like, "Hey, this homeless guy just stole these and gave these to me. You want them back?" He'd be like, "No, I don't want those."
There you go. That's good. That's good. These are all good things. That makes me feel better about eating them.
Well, it's yeah. You got a nice little snack. You didn't. I mean, what are you gonna do? Throw them away? But the other thing is that now you can count the full $10 as tithing instead of like the $8.18 that it would have been. So now it's the full $10 is towards your tithing. It's great for you.
Can you count money for tithing if it was used to fund a crime?
It wasn't used to fund the crime. All $10 is still intact. The crime was separate.
Essentially, all I did was I hired this guy to steal me candy.
See,
That sounds worse.
it went from charity. It's like, no, I'm not gonna give you charity. I'm gonna give you a job. And he's like, no, I'm not getting a job.
Right.
I'm doing a crime.
It went from give you charity. No, I'm going to promote your human dignity.
Yes, there you go.
I'm going to give you work.
Yeah.
Social teachings, one of them.
And he's
right?
saying, you know what? I'm gonna work smarter, not harder.
There you go. Yeah. He's a smart guy. Yeah.
You said compromise was what Christmas was all about. I think your story is what Christmas is all about. I think it's about giving and sharing and a little bit of crime and a little bit of I'm not sure what's going on in my moral life. I think that's what Christmas is all about.
Perfect.
Anthony, did I work too hard at that joke or did it come off pretty easy?
Are you gonna be sensitive the rest of the podcast? Is that what's gonna
100%.
happen?
I 100% took it personally, which is why I wanted to talk about it with a comedian.
I'm sorry I didn't have your back more, Taylor.
Oh no, it's okay. It's okay. But anyway, I knew how it was going to end. Aaron, how can people find you? How can people see you? And obviously, you're on the Nate Land podcast every week at Real Aaron Weber on social media. But people should go see you at a show.
Oh yeah, I'd love that. I got a big 2023, big tour coming up. I'm going to a bunch of cities I've never gone to. New Brunswick, New Jersey, Asheville, North Carolina, Milwaukee, Omaha, Nebraska. Like I'm going kind of all over. So AaronWeberComedy.com. You can check it out. It's my MySpace page. You can check it out and see all my dates on there. And I'd love you to come see the show.
It was great. I had a good time. Obviously I've been a fan of you for a while. Like Anthony and I listened to your special last year and I enjoyed it. My wife has heard you a little bit on the podcast and my best friend knew nothing about you. Just wanted to come out and have a good night. And all three of us absolutely had a great time.
That's great. Thanks, man.
So I'm going to call enough on this podcast and let you go. Merry Christmas.
All right. I love it. Thanks guys. Y'all have a good one.
Adios, you too.
Sure.
Guys, we'll be right back. Do not go anywhere. Father Anthony and I will still be salty when we get back. One of the gifts that you can give Forte Catholic during this Christmas season is to leave a review, especially if you are listening on Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on most podcast apps, a lot of them just have like where you can give the 5 stars. That's really helpful. But especially if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, leave us 5 stars, write us a couple of sentences of a review. It would really help us to continue to grow and reach more people. If you're on YouTube, just leave a comment, something that you like from the show, questions you have. All of that stuff really helps. The more like engagement we have in reviews and in the comments and stuff, it just really helps us out and reach more people. So you can help us in that very simple way, and we'd really, really appreciate it. So leave a review on Apple Podcasts or leave a comment on social media or YouTube, wherever you are engaging with this right now. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Stroll. That is Father Anthony Sciarappa. Man, that was so much fun with Aaron. I really enjoyed that.
Oh yeah, he's a great dude. It's always fun to have on.
I can't remember if I've told this story on the show, but his story about the candy bars made me think of this one. There's this really weird experience, and to the listeners, I apologize if I shared it over the last month or so. I don't know what I've said. I've said a lot of things, but I'll make it quick. My son and I went to this Mexican restaurant, just the two of us on a Friday night, because or maybe it was Saturday. My wife and the girls went to go see the Nutcracker. That's like the girls' Christmas tradition is to go see the Nutcracker a few weeks before Christmas. So it's just me and Chris. We're playing Fortnite. I say, hey, let's go have dinner. We go and we're walking into this place that like they know who we are. Like we go there often enough where like they recognize us, right? Especially like the general manager, because he's been there since before we moved here. As we're walking in, it's just me and my son, and there's another guy who, there's some connection because let's just say we're very similar looking. We're both very large, bald, bearded, jolly white men, right? So he looks at me, he's like, "That's my brother," and he goes, So he holds the door open for us, even though we're pretty far away from the door. And as we're walking up, he's doing this nice thing. But then he like sees that I'm wearing like a Houston Texans thing, and he's like, "Oh no, a Texans fan!" He starts to close the door, which is very funny to hold the door for somebody for like 10 seconds and then close it as they're getting there. It's just very funny. And he was joking. He started to close the door, and then he opened it up again. And we go in, we chat, we have a nice little conversation, and then we get seated. Me and Chris at our table. They get sat somewhere else. We have our entire dinner, and then as we're not done yet, but we're getting close to the end of our meal. That guy and I'm guessing his wife walked by and said, "Hey, just wanted to let you guys know, I hope y'all are having a good night. We took care of your dinner." And I was like,
"Really?
Incredible." Wow. And so like Chris and I had a good time. We got our queso, we got our meals and we got our drinks and stuff. So it was like $45, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's very, very kind. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas, all that stuff, right? And then so before we leave, I just want to make sure that I'm not finding myself in a situation like Aaron, right?
Right.
Because very easily you could walk to a table and say you paid for them, and then they walk out, and then now they're getting arrested, which is very funny.
Which is really like that. That's what was going on in his head when he saw your shirt.
Right.
I'm going to get this guy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to walk out, like wave to the general manager, like the most bold walk out on a tab ever. "Hey, thanks so much." All this stuff. Right. So I go and I ask the general manager, I was like, "Hey, he said he paid for our food. Did he?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Did he tip?" He's like, "I don't really want to say." I was like, "Come on, man. Like, I want to make, I was a server. I want to make sure my server was taken care of." He's like, "No, they didn't tip." I was like, "No worries at all." Like, I've got a 10, and ironically enough, all I had I didn't even think about this part. Ironically enough, all I had was a 10 in my wallet.
Yeah.
So I give that lady, our server, the 10, and then I was like, wait. Did he tip on their ticket? And he's like, "I really shouldn't say this, but no." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So then I have to like go find find the other person's server. I take back the 10 from my server. I give that 10 to her. I have my server run my card for a penny so I can give her $10 on my card, because that's all the cash I have, right?
Yeah.
So it was just this baffling moment of like, they did something so generous for us who they didn't have like any responsibility to. Yeah. But then they like screwed over the people they kind of had responsibility to. And it was this baffling moment of like, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah, that is weird. Like I totally get like, picking up someone's meal and not thinking and not leaving a tip for them, but like to not tip your own waiter or waitress and like, that's a weird combination of being both very classy and very not classy at the same time. It's kind of baffling.
Right. Yeah, and I was like, man. So the only lesson I took from it was, one, it was just kind of funny and weird, and like I had to explain it to Chris. He's like, "What just happened?" I was like, "I don't know." Like, because he saw me walking around like handing people money and taking it back and giving a card. He's like, "What are you doing?" Like usually this goes so much smoother.
Daddy's a drug dealer.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just this very silly thing, but it was also like, we can't do the right thing at the expense of doing the wrong thing, right? And I think a lot of times I do that. It was kind of a mirror back on myself of like, sometimes I will do the right thing at the expense of somebody else, and it's like, okay, it was just a reminder to do the right thing for other people all the time. Okay, that was a fun little story, but we have to pick up where you and I left off a month ago with a new
Okay.
segment that we call Plain Theology. I want to hear your explanation of this segment.
It's plain theology refers to the off-the-cuff nature in which sometimes our Holy Father will answer questions on a plane. Also, as a reference to the kind of how do I say regularness of the theology I'm giving you. It's not like fancy theology. It's just plain theology. There's
Right.
definitely a more concise way to say what I just tried to say, but
Well,
that's
it's
the
a
gist.
fun playing on words.
Yes.
Playing on words. Okay. Don't worry about it. It was one of those jokes I was trying too hard for. Okay. So I have a couple of questions. One that remains from last time, one that is new, and one that Aaron kind of referenced. And I don't know if we have time for all three. So I'm going to start with the one that Aaron referenced. This was going to be our third one. I didn't really want to talk about it on the Christmas episode, but Aaron brought it up. So I want to keep it going. Can demons hear our thoughts? What do they know and what do they not know? So like I things that I understand, this is my understanding, is that they could see my actions. Like I've read Screw Tape letters. They're like, hey, we see that our person is doing these things. Okay, let's try to get them to go to these things. But like I can pray in my head to God. I can ask the saints for my prayers or for my prayers in my head, right? Can demons like hear my thoughts? How's that work?
So the short answer is no. No, they cannot.
Yay!
Yeah, so demons can't read your thoughts. But you know how like sometimes you can tell what people are thinking just by looking at them, especially if you know them pretty well. Like it's amazing how like little facial expressions or the way people are carrying themselves, like you kind of get a glimpse into their interior life. Now you have angels who are incredibly smart and like have a greater capacity to pick up on all of those things. So they may have such a good intuition of what you're thinking, it might sometimes feel like they are, reading your thoughts, and they can, throw temptations at your thoughts, but they cannot read your thoughts. They can't get into your brain unless there's something like really serious, like demonic possession or something like that. But your everyday walking around Christian, demons cannot read your thoughts, but they're just really, really clever. So they can sometimes get an idea of what's going on there.
I'm going to think so many bad things about them in my head now, just because I know that they can't hear it.
I mean, I'm going to say don't spend a lot of time thinking about demons. That's going to be my advice. You can take it or leave it.
Instead of thinking, turn on a white noise machine.
Exactly.
Okay, here's my next one. This is a brand new one, a new thought for me that I never had in my entire life.
All right.
So the sacraments, we either see them happen or we see them modeled by Jesus in the Gospels, right? So we see, Jesus didn't need to have the same kind of baptism that we have, but so he went and got, baptized by John. Okay. We see, he gives the apostles the ability to loose or not loose sins, the keys of the kingdom of heaven. He starts the priesthood. He starts like all these things, right? And we see these examples, the Eucharist is the Last Supper. Like but here's what really blew up my brain.
Okay.
It was this past month. I was at a session on baptism at the parish. Like they were teaching about baptism, and they were like, "Oh yeah, well, Jesus baptized, but it's different than ours." So it's like I was looking for the model of baptism.
Yeah.
So Father Anthony Sciarappa, were the apostles, the original princes of the church, were they baptized?
Were they baptized? Well, I mean, if they were baptized off screen.
They sure were.
Yeah. So they were definitely, made Christians. So that was either done through baptism off screen or just by Christ doing whatever the heck he wants. But and it's also really funny. I think it's in John where there's like one sentence that says Jesus was baptizing, and then the next sentence is it actually wasn't Jesus, his apostles were baptizing. Like it's like, why, John, did you just fix it? You don't need to just scratch that part out or something. Anyway, so it is a little odd. A lot of times we see baptism through images in the Old Testament, like Israel going through the Red Sea, Noah's Ark. We see baptism in the blood and water that flowed from Christ's side. We see an image of it in the Holy Spirit descending upon Jesus when he takes on the baptism of John. John says he'll baptize with fire. So it's all in there. But I don't... were the apostles actually dunked? I don't know.
That's a very good answer, because this usually plain theology isn't a gotcha question, but sometimes there are some reporters on those planes with gotcha questions. This was my first ever. This was my first ever gotcha question on this, because there is no record of them ever being baptized, and we have record of Jesus asking them to go and baptize and make disciples,
right.
But there's no record of them doing it. So, but like, I went and looked it up. I was looking at Catholic Answers. I was looking at Theology. I was looking at all this stuff. And there's like, they're like, I mean, they probably were, but we don't know.
Exactly.
So it just blew me away. It's a thought I had never had before, and I'm just like, man, it's just so crazy that they were like priests, and we're not sure if they were baptized.
Right. They were in some way sanctified, or else they couldn't be priests.
Right.
But how did that happen?
I don't know. Okay. Anyway, that was just a fun little I don't know question for our good old Catholic Church. Okay. Here's the last one. This is kind of the big one.
All right.
But I think you would have preached on this sometime in the last few weeks, because we had a big feast day where we sang a Gloria, and we were all required to go to church. It was not a Sunday. What day was that?
This was Immaculate Conception.
Immaculate Conception, where we read about the conception of Jesus. So it must be Jesus' conception, right?
Yeah, I know. No.
so dumb. It's so dumb. We read about Jesus' conception on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. We read about the Old Testament Joseph on St. Joseph's feast day. We read the gospel about not showing that we're fasting on Ash Wednesday. What are we doing?
I don't know. That's a question for a bishop, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and they're always like, why are the lay people confused? Because of you!
I guess the reasoning is Mary's Immaculate Conception was for the birth of Jesus. So I guess that's why you do it that way. And I think the real answer is there's no scripture about it. So it's like, what are you going to do?
My favorite, I tweeted that and got a lot of responses, most of them negative and yelling at me. They're like,
of course.
Well, that's why you have to listen to the homily. I did. This was what the homily was about. My pastor talked about this in his homily, about how it's confusing, about how it was just very funny. I was like, don't call me out. I was listening. How do you think I got content for this show? Okay. Yes. But that day with the Immaculate Conception, my actual question is about preservative grace. And it's not really a theological question. It's more of a question about how theology works. Because here's what happened. I was at a session on Mary. This was actually for our foundations course. And I don't teach the session on Mary because I'm not very well versed in Mary. So Jennifer, the other person that teaches in our foundations course, you can find here on YouTube, she always gets to talk about Mary because she has a vast depth of knowledge about Mary and a very good relationship with Mary. Like, she prays the rosary every day, and I don't. Cool. So I was hearing about preservative grace, and I've heard it a bunch of times. I heard it at the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. I heard it at this foundation session a few weeks ago. With a skeptic's ear, it can sound absolutely insane. Okay, it sounds very convenient. Like most stuff in my mind, when I learn new things about like how the Old Testament and the New Testament connect, what it does for me is it proves it even more, because I see that like this is perfect storytelling. Only God could have told this perfect story that 2,000 years before, or 2,000 years BC connected with something 33 years AD. Like nobody else could have done it but God. But with preservative grace, I don't get that feeling or that like mindset of like, this is perfect storytelling and it all connects. It seems very convenient, and like somebody just came up with it later. It's like this whole idea of Mary being saved by Jesus' death, after Jesus' death. Like it seems very convenient and kind of made up. So I want you to explain prevenient grace to me.
Because you were saying preservative grace, and that which I think is getting at the same thing, but it just reminded me of toast. I was thinking of like different
preservative grace.
Now I'm very hungry.
Make sure you pray over your jams, but not your jellies.
Exactly. You got to do that first. Mary's. Anyway, so the thing about a lot of theology, so this is me just kind of guessing at this right now, is that we do the theology before we realize what the theology is. So we were praying the Mass before we had a theology of the Mass.
Oh,
We were praying for the dead before we had a why and how we pray for the dead, right? Or like we were praying for the dead before we had an idea of purgatory. So a lot of times the church simply examines what the Holy Spirit has guided her to do. So a lot of that, so we have these certain traditions about Mary because we've always had them. It's been a part of like the family thing from like the apostles' experience of Mary and the stories that would have been passed on. And so we also know that Jesus Christ is fully God and fully man from that. So you have to, it's kind of like taking all of those factors together and be like, okay, well then how does this work? And the only way it could have worked is the only way a human being can be saved is through Jesus Christ. Well, very conveniently, God is outside and all around time. Time's a really weird thing when we start talking about God. So it's kind of like looking at what we have and then searching for an explanation for it, which is a lot of how we do theology. And that's kind of how you get that sort of thing. And if someone were to say, doesn't that sound awfully convenient? I mean, that's one way to look at it. Or another way to look at it is like God's very clever. He figured it out. He's a smart cookie. That there, God. But yeah. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah. And
And
like, go ahead.
And the final thing is like there's a bit of an analogy, not a perfect one, with what we see today. That there are some people who like kind of grow up with the faith, who grow into it. There's not a big conversion moment for them. They're just always kind of a part of the faith, and they don't leave it. And there's other people who have kind of bigger conversion experiences later on in life. They're both saved by Jesus Christ, but one's kind of saved in this prevenient way, and other people are saved in this like kind of conversion type way. So you can see that modeled in a more ordinary fashion. So that's sometimes how I think about it as well. So there you go.
Yeah. No, it's good. And I think the analogy that I think is most commonly used is like, there's a big hole in the street and, so you're driving your car, sinkhole shows up, you fall into the sinkhole, and then Jesus comes in and saves you out of the sinkhole. It's like, did Jesus save you from the sinkhole? Yeah. Or, like me driving down the road, I'm driving right behind you. I see you go into the sinkhole. So I stop I don't, or let's no, back up. I don't see you go into the sinkhole, but Jesus sees me going towards the sinkhole, tells me to stop. I don't go in the sinkhole. Did Jesus save me from the sinkhole? Yes, Jesus saved me from the sinkhole, right? So we're both people saved from the sinkhole. Yes. Yeah. One had to dip into the sinkhole, which is sin first, and then the other person didn't. And like that's everybody else. And then Mary is the person, Mary was me in that scenario, right?
Yeah.
But I think like I think I get it. I think it rubs me the wrong way with most people's understanding of how Mary was frustrated, or Mary was saved. It frustrates me because, so when was Mary saved? I think there are two moments that are the same moment. The moment is when Jesus rose from the dead or died on the cross, right? Like somewhere in those 3 days, right?
The Paschal mystery.
The Paschal mystery, right? But also the moment was her conception. And it was the same moment because the Paschal mystery had to happen for her to be saved, right? Mm-hmm. So I like honestly where this comes from is every year people are always hating on the Mary Did You Know song, right? And I think most Catholics bashing that song and yelling about it, saying, of course she knew, the angel Gabriel told her. And my argument almost every year is angel Gabriel didn't tell her much. And the beauty of that story is that she held these things in her heart and pondered them because she did not come away with the information that we have now. She came away with very little information. I don't fully understand what's going on, but I'm going to say yes to God. And that's the beauty of the story. So I think it takes away from the beauty of the story when people say, oh, of course Mary knew. She knew everything. The angel Gabriel told her. No, he didn't. He didn't tell her that. But then also, like the big line that everybody says makes Mary Did You Know heretical is that the child that you delivered will soon deliver you or will one day deliver you. right? Where it's like, I get like, with what we believe about preservative grace, that is still true because the Paschal mystery hasn't happened yet. When Jesus is a baby, the salvation that she received, it's those two moments, right? That are the two moments are outside of time, but our story, we are in this story and we are in time, right? Where it's like, could the song have gone into full detail about preservative grace theory and all? Of course it could have, right? But telling half of the story doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that you only told half the story, right? Because the child that you delivered you will one day deliver you and already has delivered you. That's the line that's missing, right? But that doesn't make that line wrong. And like, that's where like my frustration has been. And it's like, I'm not really frustrated about a song, right? I'm frustrated that people are frustrated by a song because I like Catholics' vitriol around this. I don't like vitriol around anything when it comes to Catholicism, but secondarily, it's like, I think it's a misunderstanding of Jesus' salvific action. I don't know. What do you think?
I think we should hate Mary Did You Know, Mary Did You Know, because it's overly saccharine and sappy and cringe. But
you have hold on. Have you heard the Pentatonics version?
Oh, they do everything good though.
I know they do. It's so great.
Okay.
Have you,
No.
the Jordan Smith version? Okay, that's a musical thing, right? I get your joke.
Okay, but
right.
Any version of Mary Did You Know that's played in the Catholic Church is not the Pentatonics version. Okay.
Right.
And it's not a liturgical song, whatever. Fine. But as far as your more substantive points, like, yes, it would be wrong to say that Mary completely grasped all the implications of what the angel told her. She has to ponder those things in her heart. She still has to follow Christ. She's constantly, she has faith, but she still has hope because she does not fully grasp everything that's going to happen. And the craziest moment is that it's fair to say that even after Christ died, Mary did not lose hope. But did she know that that meant the resurrection? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Right? So she's in this spot where all she has is hope. She has it, but the resurrection would have been just as much of a joyful surprise to her. She was awaiting a thing that she could not see, but trusted would happen, but didn't know what. So I think you lose some of the beauty of Mary's discipleship if you just have this idea that when Gabriel spoke to her, she had like a roadmap of time and knew exactly what's going to happen. That's not true.
Yeah.
That's not, So that for sure. And as far as like that line, as far as like the Savior will save you, whatever. I mean, I'm pretty sure the artist who wrote that song wasn't thinking about prevenient grace.
Right.
But if you want to like really bend it, fine, whatever. I see your point. There is a way to kind of poetically do that a little bit more accurately than he does. But your biggest point about people getting all fired up about Mary Did You Know, and that being silly, wholeheartedly agree. It's just like we get really excited and we're really happy to bash this one song about Mary. It's like, whatever. It's just a song. Just don't play it. Don't listen to it. Who cares? Just do it. Like, chill.
And I don't think I even really understood my frustration until here at the end of our conversation. It's this culture within Catholicism of bashing things, and while we're bashing things, we're missing the mystery. We're missing the deep parts of it, right? Which is essentially what we just talked about. And I just don't like it. And I would my Christmas gift that you can give to me would be to just stop bashing stuff. Just leave it alone. And find the mystery in it, right? And it's like, yes, there are ways that we can be playful about things, but it's just like, it's stuff like this that just gets piled on every year. It's just piled on and piled on, and I'm just tired of it. I'm just so tired of it.
Yeah, hating Mary Did You Know doesn't make you clever. It's not a personality. Just calm down. Like, who cares?
Right. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, I like Mary. I love that part. I like, and that's one of my favorite parts of the Marian story is that she didn't fully understand everything, and yet she was still this model disciple and perfect.
Right.
And it's like, it just adds so much more to the story other than this crap theology that we get through hating on Mary Did You Know. Anyway, that's our Christmas episode. It was a little bit more contentious than I planned.
Cranky Christmas episode.
Cranky Christmas. We had a little depresso Christmas, but don't worry, you got to listen to Aaron Weber, and what a treat that was. Go get yourself a couple Milky Ways, pay for them, adult. What do I care? if you do steal, you can get a minor indulgence by sending over the funds that you would have sent for your Milky Ways to fortecatholic.com/donate. Send us a Christmas gift. We would appreciate it. Father Anthony Sciarappa, Merry Christmas, buddy.
Merry Christmas, Taylor.
That's Father Anthony. I'm Taylor Schroll. I'll be back next week. He'll be back in a month. See ya! Thank you guys for watching and listening today. I hope that you enjoyed our Christmas episode with Father Anthony and comedian Aaron Weber. If you did, share the Christmas joy. Give your friends a gift for free by hitting the share button wherever you are watching or listening to this right now. Share it with them in a text on social media. It will just really help us out as we're moving into the new year. We just like to continue to grow the people that listen to the show. We know that you enjoy it because here you are in one of the longest episodes we've ever done, still listening. If you are still listening at this point, I challenge you to share this with at least one person. Thank you guys. Y'all are the best. Merry, Merry Christmas from all of us to you. Thanks, and we'll see you soon. Love you.
Aaron Weber's story started with charity. No, here's a job. No, here's a crime. And now Taylor's like, now here's charity again.
Yeah.
He brought it full
Full circle.